Hi everyone, so I'm here today to share a couple of cards that I made using some products from MFT Stamp's April 2019 release. This is the Picture Perfect stamp set, and it is a really large stamp set, and it has these 6 great little selfies with hamsters and cats and dogs and monkeys, and there's a little koala or a sloth, I don't know which that is, but lots of cute little animals. And in the cards that we're going to make today, we're going to use the 2 on the top. So we're going to use the little doggies and then the 2 little cats. Now this die is the Photobooth Strip Dynamics, and we are also going to use this product in the cards that we make to make a great black and white copic colored strip of selfies. This is the Shutter Card Components Dynamic. This we are not going to use in this video, but hopefully I will use it in a subsequent video. These are the Captions Dynamics, and they say hashtag smile, hashtag sweet, and hashtag hello, and we are going to use that in this video. This is the Selfie Square Dynamics that matches perfectly with the size of the little squares here. So if you want to die cut out the little squares, you have a die that matches it perfectly. And then this is the Polaroid Shaker Frame Dynamics, and we're going to use this today to make a little Polaroid picture with our stamp set, but we are not going to use it as a shaker. And then this is the Free with 60 die that came with my order this month, and this is the Rickrack die, and we are going to use that a whole bunch with the cards that we're going to make. So let's take one last look at all these great products from MFT's April release, and let's get started on our card. All right, so I took a bunch of pieces of cardstock from MFT Stamps and in rainbow color, and I arranged them in rainbow order, and I cut them out using the Rickrack die, and then I am just going to attach them to my work area. And now we're just going to weave in 3 black Rickracks to make a nice woven little embellishment to add to our card. And I'm just kind of going over and under with each of the black Rickracks, making sure to do it again in a weaving pattern. So if I went over one of the Rickracks on Rickrack 1, then I'll go under on Rickrack 2. And they just kind of pop in really nicely together. All right, so once I have my 3 Rickrack in, I'm just going to secure everything with some masking tape, and then we're going to flip it over, because now we need to make sure that our woven Rickrack is going to stay together. So I'm taking 1/8 of an inch score tape, and I'm going to attach it behind each of the horizontal Rickracks, the black ones. And then I'm going to take my bone folder and press the tape down into the cardstock to make sure that it is nice and secure. And then we're going to peel the tape off. And there we go. And now it is time to add some adhesive to the parallel Rickrack. So I just used some tape runner with that. And then I'm going to attach some black and white pattern paper underneath our Rickrack, and that's going to help make our little embellishment for the card. And then I'm going to take the masking tape off because I don't need it anymore. And so now we have this cute little Rickrack embellishment that we're going to use for the bottom of the card. I think there are a lot of different ways to use this. I used it in 2 different ways on these cards. One way, I cut the Rickrack so that it was even or level with the black and white pattern paper, and in this one we're going to keep one of the ends so that it's kind of sticking out above. So the Rickrack, the rainbow Rickrack, is sticking up, and we're going to use that on our card in a little bit. So now we are going to color in our little selfie with the 2 little cats, and we're going to make 2 versions of our selfies. We're going to make a color version, and then we're going to make 3 little black and white versions as well with the same stamp. So this is a great project to do if you want to kind of practice turning a colored image into black and white. It's a lot of fun, and I think you'll learn a lot about your coloring if you try this technique. If you're unsure of how to kind of transform a color picture into black and white, you could always take a picture of the color version that you draw and that you color in, and then just use the black and white feature on your phone, and then you'll have a photograph that you can copy if you're not comfortable kind of making it up as you go. Here, I just tried to follow a pretty simple pattern of having certain parts on our little critters dark and other parts light, so that when it comes time to turn them into black and white, it's pretty easy and obvious what values to use. And I'll explain all that once we get to the black and white portion of the coloring. So for our little kitty in the front, I'm using some yellow reds for him and some warm browns also. So for his body, we're using E51, E53, and then E55. And then for the top of his head, around his eyes, those are some YR21, YR24, and YR27. And then for the little pads on his paws and his nose and his ears, I'm using R00, R30, and then R21. And then I think our little kitty in the back, when we get to him, we're gonna give him some darker pink pads just to have a little bit of variation. So for my coloring, I'm just focusing my darker color on the edges of the body, and then my lighter color towards the center of the body. I'm just doing really, really simple shading here. And then for our second little kitty, we are going to color him in some red-brown shades. So we're going to use E13 as our base, and then E15, and then E19. And we're just going to use one set of colors for his body, unlike our little kitty in the front, who is kind of two-toned. And for the background, we're going to use some yellow greens here. So I'm going to start with some YG11, and I'm going to focus that around the top of the little selfie square. And then the bottom, we're going to use some YG0000, and then I'm also going to put that around the characters' heads as well, just to have some nice variations in color in our background. And then on the very edges of the top of the frame, we're going to use some YG13 and then blend it all out with our YG11. And I think that looks good, and I think that these colors are going to look really, really nice on our rainbow colored card. So now I'm adding some highlights. So I want the eyes to stand out, so I'm just kind of dotting a black glaze pen over the eyes. And then I'm going to just clean up the little sections of the eye where my Copic markers bled a little bit with a white gel pen, and then add some little white gel pen highlights to the pads of the paws. We're going to put some little freckles on the cheeks of both of our little kitties. And we're also going to duplicate that when we do the black and white version, which is going to be fun. And just some highlights on the sides of the body as well. And then we can move on to coloring our black and white little photo strip that's going to go on top of the card as well. All right, so I cut out these little 1-inch squares using the Selfie or the Photobooth strip dynamic, and I just took the little square that pops out of the center, and I'm taking the same stamp that we use for our color version, and I'm just going to arrange it in different spots on the square so that we get just different parts of the picture. So this one, we focused on the little kitty in the back, and then this next little square that I'm going to do, we will focus in on the kitty in the front. So I'm going to make sure that I place my stamp appropriately over my little 1-inch square, because we're only going to be able to pick up part of what is in that square. And then I'm just going to pick that up with my little reverse tweezer so that I don't smear it by trying to pick it up with my hand. And then for the third one doesn't matter so much because this is going to be on the very bottom of the card and we're not going to see much of it. So I don't really care where I stick this stamp. So there we got a little bit of both of them, but that one is not as important as the first two. All right, so let's move on to coloring in our little characters in black and white. And I have the color photo to the right just so that we can follow along, so we can figure out which parts of our little characters need to be darker based on how they look in the colored photo. So for our little kitty in the front, the top of his head, the area around his eyes is going to be darker than his face, and his body is going to be darker than his face. So that will help us to figure out where to apply the darker shades of the Copics and where to use the lighter shades. Now I'm using my toner grays for this. My toner grays are my absolute favorite grays to use if I'm doing like anything that resembles like a comic book or a comic strip feel to it. And I felt that these little stamp sets, and especially when you put them into the Photobooth strip die, that it really had a comic book feel to it. So I was excited to get out my toner grays, but any grays that you have will work here. And I'm not using all of the values of the grays. I'm just using my T0 for my lightest, my T1, my T3, my T5, T7, and then I will use black 100 in the Copic family at some points, where there are some areas where we want it just to be solid black. And I'm just going to keep working by adding my darker Copic markers to the areas that appear darker in the colored version, and then my lighter shades to the areas that are lighter. And so when I talk about lighter shades, those shades that I'm using are the T3, the T1, and the T0 for the most part. And then when I'm working in a dark area, I am limiting myself to my T5, my T7, and maybe a little bit of T3 in the very center of whatever I'm doing, just so that the image doesn't just get completely overwhelmed by the darkness. Like here's an example of where I'm kind of lightening up that really dark image with my my T3. And then if things bleed at any point, I just go right in with my colorless blender, although that's not necessary because we can just clean it up with our white gel pen at the end if we need to. And now I'm done with this first one, so I'm just going to add in the little freckles on both of our little characters, and then our little highlights, putting them in the same spots that are in the colored version. And then that is it. And I also did use the black glaze pen on the little eyes on the black and white version, just so that they stand out, so that the eyes on both the colored and the black and white, that they really pop out. I thought that it was important to use the glaze pen for that. Okay, so for the second and third little photos that we're going to be coloring in black and white, I sped up the video somewhat just because I'm using the same exact method that I did for the first little black and white photo. All I'm doing is looking at the reference photo on the right, meaning the colored version, and then just adding my darker Copic shades to the areas that appear darkest in the colored version, and then my lighter colors in the areas that appear lighter. So the areas that appear lighter to me are the noses. So those I am using my lighter colors, meaning my 0, my 1, and my 3. The pads of the paws are lighter. The little ears, where they're pink in the photo, those would appear to be lighter in black and white. So I'm focusing my 1, 3, and 5 there, or I'm sorry, my 0, 1, and 3. And then my darker areas would be for the little kitty in the back, his entire body, because that dark red brown is a really dark shade. So I'm really using a lot of T5 and T7 on that little guy in the back. And then for our little kitty in the front, the area around his eyes is darker, his body is darker, and then his face is lighter. So that's kind of how I'm figuring out where to apply my shades. So I'm not sure where you are in the country or in the world right now, but I am just outside of Chicago in the United States, and we are in the middle of what I hope is the last snowstorm of the year. It is right in the middle of spring. We've already had weather in the 70s, and today it is snowing really, really hard outside, and I'm just watching it as I'm sitting here and doing this voiceover, and it's pretty amazing. We're like 3 days away from May, and it is blizzarding outside. So it's been a really interesting experience for me with my move to Chicago this year. In the Northeast, where I had been living in New Jersey and New York, maybe we would have snow December, January, February, sometimes March, but here it's been snowing pretty consistently since October, and now it's almost May. All right, so let's get back to the card. And now we're going to put together a little selfie strip. And I just cut out a backing, and this backing is 1.75 inches by 5.25 inches. And I just put adhesive all over it so that I could just pop in my little selfie squares right in there without worrying about putting any adhesive on the back of my photos and maybe smearing them. Now we're going to put together our little Polaroid selfie. And again, I am using a little backing for our selfie, and I think that one is 2.25 by 3 inches or something like that. It's whatever the size of the Polaroid Shaker Frame is what I used. And then I'm just going to pop in our little color photo or color picture right into there, and then I'm just using a few frames. I'm stacking about 2 or 3 of them, one on top of each other, just to give our little photo a little bit of interest and make it pop. Now we're going to take those little captions, hashtag Captions Dynamics, and I cut them out in all rainbow shades, and I picked some colors that I liked, and now I'm just going to attach them with some liquid adhesive to the bottom of our little color photo, and it says hashtag smile, which I really, really love that. I think it's so cute. And just going to finish gluing all of those on. Okay, and now we're going to move on to just putting our card together. So I'm taking a white card panel and I'm going to put it on top of a black A2 size card base. And then we're going to take our little Rickrack embellishment that we created in the beginning and figure out where we want to place that. I think we want to place it along the bottom. And our little photo strip, I cut off the bottom of it so that it fits on the card. And I'm just going to arrange it on the right side on a little bit of an angle. And our third picture is going to be covered up somewhat, but that's okay. And then I'm going to put foam tape on the back of our little Rickrack embellishment and make sure that it is covered so that it is nice and firm and sturdy on the front of the card. And that looks really good to me. So now I'm happy with that. Then I put a double layer of foam tape on the back of our little colored photo, our little colored Polaroid picture, and I'm going to place that at an angle on in the upper left-hand corner. And now for our sentiment. Our sentiment, I'm putting one layer of foam tape on here, and I just love this sentiment. It says, "Our friendship is picture perfect," and I just love this card. Hashtag smile, our friendship is picture perfect, with these great little colored photos and our little black and white photo strip in the background. Today I didn't know if I wanted to work with rainbow colors or with black and white, and it just ended up that I just did it all together. So you get a little bit of everything on this card. And then to make our little smile pop out even more, I just went over that with some glossy accents, and in some areas it bled a little bit, so I'm just going to clean that up with my tool-in-one. And now that looks good to me. And now let's take a look at our cute little card. And then I'm also going to share another version that I made earlier, and this one I made with the little doggies in the Picture Perfect stamp set. And my Rickrack embellishment is a little bit different there. I cut my Rickrack down so that it was level with our black and white pattern paper, but I just love these cards. I had so much fun making them. I would love to hear from you in the comments which one you like better, and if you have any of these products, and if so, what types of projects you're working on with them. And if there's anything you would like to see me make with these products that I've shown, please let me know in the comments, and I would be happy to accommodate you if I am able. All right, thanks everyone. Have a great weekend, and I will see you again in the next video.